welcome everyone to our workshop today. Our presenter is going to be here, Mr. Jorge Ramirez, and his workshop is on developmentally appropriate practices in early childhood education. I will be here for background support. If any of you need captions or subtitles, you are able to enable that. So down below on your screen, there should be a button that says captions. You would click on it, and then you should click on something that says show captions, and then you'll be able to see the words and the subtitles as our presenter is speaking. And then if you have any questions, right, let us know in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself, and I will go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Jorge.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to come and have a conversation with me about developmentally appropriate practices. Thank you, Emily. My name is Jorge Ramirez. Currently, I have some different positions that I have throughout my career. Right now, I'm currently teaching at Cal State LA and ELAC. I teach child development there. I'm also a master teacher at Pacific Oaks, which is pretty much where I'm at. So if you hear the children in the background, they're outside. I told them I had to step away, and they're like, well, can we go? So, no, you guys got to stay outside and enjoy your morning while I come in here and talk to other people in the field. I'm also a mentor for the schools that I graduated from, USC, Cal State LA, and ELAC. I'm also mentoring at Hondo College. And I'm part of the California Early Childhood Education Mentor Program. If you guys are currently teaching in the field and are a teacher in preschool, look into this program. That gives you a lot of great opportunity to network with other future teachers. And it's also an opportunity for you to get compensated while doing this. You can always shoot me an email if you have any questions with this, and I'll gladly provide you with the resources to help you get on board to be a mentor for California childhood education. For the past 2 seasons, I've been a podcast host at Rio Hondo for Capture the Passion. I'll make sure that I drop the link below so you guys can have access to it. You can also scan the QR code and it'll give you access to my LinkedIn account. I have the podcast there linked ready, so you guys can always check that out too. Anything that I can do to help you, please feel free to reach out. Being a mentor allows me to network and connect with other professionals, and hopefully we can build a really strong foundation to continue providing high quality education for our early childhood students. So let's jump right into this conversation. Let's use the chat, or you guys can unmute yourself. What is early childhood education, known as ECE? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What kind of work is completed? How do we assess children's work? Who leads the classroom and the activities? Anybody want to just answer any of these questions? Again, you guys can unmute or just use the chat.
It looks like play. That's what it looks like. But what it sounds like is emotional regulation, realizing that there's someone outside that has needs also. So their kids are learning how to share, collaborate, and work with each other.
I like that. I like the fact that you brought in social emotional. It's very important. And I think throughout my research, I've been in the field for 23 years now. My experience in research is that, unfortunately, social emotional development doesn't take the priority as much as the academic component does. And it can get a little frustrating at times, I'll be honest, mainly because we have a lot of children that are coming into these programs where they're not allowed to openly express their emotions. Us as adults, sometimes we struggle with that ourselves, into how do we have a conversation about emotions when we don't know what it looks or it sounds like. But thank you for chiming in, Arlene. Anyone else want to take another shot at these questions? You guys can use the chat or unmute yourselves. Any of the questions?
When I look at these, I just think about being present and being there for the child. Sometimes we don't have good days, and sometimes we want to talk about it, and sometimes we don't, and we just got to help them out.
Oh, yes, very good point there, Mary. I think a lot of times we do have those challenging days within ourselves, whether it was traffic, whether it was that we forgot to pack our coffee or we snooze, whatever the situation is. And then we're coming into a classroom where we're going to be working with children for the next 8 hours. It can get a little challenging. So what I want to focus in this conversation with you about is what is developmentally appropriate practices. I'll tell you what early childhood education is not. It's not kindergarten. It's not babysitting. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I know to a lot of different programs that exist in our field, sometimes the idea is we have children at school. Let's just give them all the information to get them ready for kindergarten. And through research, we understand specifically through brain development that children that are not at the kindergarten level yet don't have the capacity to really comprehend and understand academic yet. Not to say they can't memorize it. Memorizing and understanding concepts is two very different things. And I want us to really understand what that means. When we memorize things, we use our short-term memory. So we're able to recall certain things. We're able to just, and I'm going to use the term regurgitate things without really understanding what it means. So you have Jorgito in your class who can tell you the alphabet or can count to 100 without a problem. But is that really understanding the concepts of the letters or the numbers, or is it more that he's using a short-term memory? I will argue the fact that children are very good at using their memory skills, specifically the short-term memory, that are able to just repeat what they've heard. This is an example of social learning theory and social cognitive theory, that children are just listening and they're absorbing their environment around. But do they really understand the concepts? And we'll dive into that conversation about kindergarten. Now, again, being in the field for 23 years, sometimes I can get really frustrated when people tell me, oh, you're just a babysitter. So what do you do, Jorge? Oh, I work with kids. What age? Oh, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. Oh, so you're kind of like a babysitter. No, at first, I'll be honest, at the beginning of my career, I would get very frustrated by it and I'd get insulted. Now I'm at a point where you want to call me a babysitter, then call me a babysitter, but I'm a very expensive babysitter. The reality is that it's not babysitting. There's more to early childhood education, and we'll discuss that in our presentation today. Early childhood education is not a one-size-fits-all. It's very supported through research that children are their own individual, pretty much universe. Based on Erickson's stages of psychosocial development, children are very egocentric in this age, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So if you're not within them, if you're not within their sight, they strongly believe that you're non-existent. Right now, the children in my classroom, I probably don't exist to them until I come back to them. But do they remember me? Sure, of course they do. But again, that's short-term memory. But to them, this world literally revolves around them. And that's why it's important for us to understand that and carry that, so we don't have a one-size-fits-all, because what works for Jorgito might not work for Brianna or might not work for Joy, and that's perfectly fine. It's probably more challenging because if we have 24 or 30 children in the classroom, we have to find a way to adapt and grasp each and every one of their individual learning styles to help us get the concepts that we want to teach. It's challenging. It's not babysitting, that's for sure. So let's talk about developmentally appropriate practices, DAP. According to NAAYC, who is the National Association for the Education of Young Children, their biggest push for DAP focuses on methods that promote the child's optimal development and learning through the child's strength, through play-based approach that's engaging, learning, and it's very joyful for them. But, oh, yes, thank you, Emily. If you need the captions, check the chat. I'm going to put the instructions on how to get the captions. So DAP focuses on using the child's interest, using play to get them interested in what we want them to learn and understand. DAP specifically focused on culturally, linguistically, and ability appropriate for each individual child. Again, not the one-size-fits-all approach. DAP also fosters independence, autonomy, self-efficacy, and self-esteem. So the conversation leads into, well, we can do that if we were to just dilute the curriculum that kindergartens use. You can, but through the research, which is completely on our side, specifically from the NAAYC, early childhood education does not look like a kindergarten classroom. Think of what a kindergarten classroom looks like. Children are sitting at desks. Yes, they have a rug, they have a lot of different areas, but their environment is not fit like an early childhood education class. Kindergarten students are pretty much lined up, following what the teacher says, has very little input into what they want to learn about. When early childhood education, again, emphasizing on DAP, then we focus on what they want to learn. And we do it in a method that that's focused and geared to their developmental appropriate needs. Focusing on developmental milestones. Now, these milestones are pretty much fundamental and they're universal to children as they're developing. These milestones focus on the child's strength. Well, what if Jorgito really has this deep interest for dinosaurs? Okay, usually, and it's pretty common that specifically boys in early childhood education, they have this deep interest for dinosaurs. So if we use dinosaurs to facilitate his learning, we might have a better opportunity to helping him really understand and grasp the knowledge that we want him to have just by using dinosaurs as our medium to help him grasp those concepts. You can throw in colors, you can throw in letters, you can throw in shapes, sizes, what have you, but it has to be based on what Jorgito wants to learn. Our task is to design and implement our environment as a learning tool to help children understand what it is that we want them to learn. So again, Jorgito really enjoys the outdoors. He loves sand, he loves waters. How can I help him understand the cause and effect in a chemical reaction? Well, it's very common to see books of dinosaurs that are surrounded by volcanoes. So let's introduce that concept of volcanoes to him. How can we make a volcano using very common household items that are non-expensive to help him understand the cause and effect? Well, if you have vinegar, baking soda, food coloring, and a little bit of dish soap, you can have a volcano erupt in the class. Again, he loves the sand. Hey, you know what? How can we make a volcano out in the sandbox today? And you start using that because, again, that's what he wants to do. As you're developing this volcano with the sand and the dinosaurs, you're throwing in all these other concepts that you want him to really understand. As you're doing that, it's not just about the academic, but it's also developing the child as a whole. So you're fostering skills and developing muscles. You've seen that Jorgito doesn't have any interest for writing, but to write, you need to find motor development. Well, when you out there digging up the sand, have him use his hands. So he's grasping the volcano. What does that do? You're developing the fine motor skills, the muscles in his hands. Does he know and understand that? No, of course not. But you're using that to build the other skills that are going to help him get ready for the next level. What's appropriate? Well, this is very subjective. And I welcome another conversation from you guys to talk about the difference between child-initiated activities versus teacher-directed activities. The child's ability versus the one-size-fits-all approach, and authentic work versus Pinterest, Google, social media, or what have you. Child-initiated activities talk about children deciding what they want to learn. And the teacher is used more of a facilitator, not necessarily as I'm giving you the instructions, you're just sitting there and listening and absorbing, but rather I'm going to facilitate what you want to learn about and also inject the other components that are based on your developmental milestones to help you and develop you as a whole to get you to that point. So the difference here is the child-initiated activities versus the teacher-directed activities. Child-initiated is based on the children's interest. Teacher-directed is based on the teacher's interest. So again, let's have this conversation about curriculum. I've worked for school districts that use a prescribed curriculum. Now, this isn't a knock on any curriculum. This is not to say that it's wrong, but it's a rather challenge for us to understand into how we're doing these things. So Jorgito happens to be in my class. And my class is a very traditional preschool class. And in this school pertains to a school district that uses a prescribed curriculum. Jorgito's 3. He's going to be in our program for 2 more years. And our curriculum is not going to change next year, which means this year he's going to learn the exact same thing that he's going to learn next year when he's in the class. Anybody want to chime in on that? Prescribed curriculum versus a child-initiated approach. Yes, Myra.
One thing that comes to mind is how boring for a child to come in and do something that is not of his interest. And if we're trying to get them ready for school, why not try to inspire them to like what they're learning?
That's a very good point. Now, the difference of repetitive work versus routine. Routine is what children, they can predict what's going to happen. That's not based on a curriculum. A curriculum that repeats the thing over and over, and it's very driven by the curriculum itself, like Myra, and I'm going to use Myra's words, can get a little boring for the child. We get caught up into saying, oh, well, you know what? The curriculum is going to expose the child to all these other domains across their assessments. Okay, fine, but is it really the child's interest? How much interest can a child have on something that is not relevant to their environment, it's not relevant to their culture, it's not relevant to their life, period? Let me see what Nikki says. I think child initiated gives a child a sense of independence, but lets them know they are each valued and their interests are important. Agree with you 100%. Absolutely true. A child that comes into the class and can say, you know what? Today, I want to know, why is it that the water is very fluid when the sand is wet versus when it's very dry? Why is it that when I pour sand when it's dry, the water seems to just seep through, as opposed to when it's wet, it sort of flows like a river? And why is it that whenever I have a little hill for it, it doesn't seem to go up? These questions that children have, they genuinely ask, because I've had those questions asked out in the yard. And it's usually, my answer is like, why do you think that happens? Oh, okay. You want to try it? Let's go try it. What do we need to get to try this out? You want to call one of your friends? Maybe they can help us. You want to ask more friends? Do you have all the tools outside? Is there anything that I need to get to you so you can do this experiment? And all I'm doing is I get my phone and just start snapping pictures. And I'm just there whenever they have a question, like, excuse me, oh, we need more water. I'll get the water for you. Don't even move. I'll get the water for you. Right? Oh, you know what? What if we use the pipes instead? And the pipes can help channel the water somewhere else. Again, this is part of the conversations that I've heard. That's right. Go get the pipes. No, let me go get the pipes. You guys keep doing what you're doing. And again, this facilitation of their interest essentially leads into helping the child problem solve, helps the child analyze what they're doing, and more importantly, build that sense of autonomy and independence. I see some of my students are in this workshop, and thank you guys for joining us. And one of the conversations that I've had with you guys in the class is, when I give you a certain assignment, and specifically to reflect and tell me what research means to you, it can get very difficult. The questions that I get asked for my college students is, what do you want me to write about? What does it look like? Can you give me a sample? And my answer is always no. I'm not going to give you a sample. I want you to tell me what the research means to you. I want you to reflect on your learning. And most of the time after the assignment, my students get very upset with me. And it's, can I blame you for being conditioned for the past 13, 14, 15, maybe even 16 years of your life, that you've been told what to do when to do it, and how to do it by a teacher. In other words, you've been conditioned to believe that the teacher knows it all and tells you that it has to be that way. Early childhood education is about independence. It's what it is, child development. Now, the challenge that I have for you in attendance is how much development is actually going on in these schools that we can say, you know what, yeah, these children are really developing to their full individual potential. That was part of the initial conversation, right? The cookie cutter, the one size fits all approach. Let me catch up on the chat. Excuse me. Oh, yes. Our expectations affect what and how the children learn. Oh, Cynthia, yes, open-ended questions are very helpful, and it helps the child how to scaffold their learning. So if use the open-ended question in the thought-provoking questions, you're able to pretty much navigate or facilitate the child's learning into whatever it is that you want them to accomplish. So Jorgito wants to know, well, why is the lava red? You know what? I don't know. What's lava? Oh, it's something very hot. So what happens when something gets hot? Does it change colors? Oh, it changes red. Do you think that's probably why the lava is red? These are all thought-provoking questions, right? You're helping them connect. Now, one of them is going to say, nah, the lava's blue. And it's our responsibility, again, to facilitate that. Where have you seen blue lava? I don't think I've seen blue lava, as opposed to, no, dude, you're wrong. Stop. No, dude, it's red, okay? It's red. It's very, again, scaffolding and navigating and facilitating their learning to bring them back into what it is that we want them to start learning and accomplishing. What do you do when I see something, when you're not sure of the answer? Oh, I'm sorry, did I answer that question? If you don't know the answer to that question, it's always good to let them know, you know what, I have no idea what that means, but let's find out. Let's see what happens. You know what? I don't know. So I have the virtual background. So I'm up here, I'm upstairs in the office, in my office for my class. They're downstairs. Here, there's a bunch of books. And this is where I come in and I do the research. If there's something that I need to research. One of the students recently asked me, are there volcanoes in the ocean? And I said, well, I haven't been to the bottom of the ocean, but I've read that there's a lot of plate movement under the ocean. And I intentionally said plate movement, and the child said, what's plates? Like plates what we eat on? Very similar, but it's different into the way our world is. Again, I haven't been to the bottom of the ocean, but that's what I've read. And guess what they asked? Where'd you read that? I read in one of the classes that I took, Earth Science. I'm gonna get the book and I'm gonna show you, so then we can talk about it. So yes, I brought in the my Earth Science book, opened it up and I showed it to them. And obviously they can't read, but the curiosity of, what is it saying? Read it to us. This is all appropriate to their level. And I'm so, get this, I'm reading them a college book, a college course textbook that I used in one of my classes at the preschool level. And again, facilitating their interest and helping them understand what it means. I'm not giving them plate tectonics and the different types of shifts. No, it's more of like, well, if you think about it, the way the plates move, this is what happens. They sometimes crash into each other. And at the very core, deep in the center of the earth, that's where all the elements are. A lot of visuals for these students. And this is all based on Jorgito's interest of dinosaurs. So what did I do? I brought in or facilitated something else. All this is pretty much building their problem solving skills. And Jorgito feels pretty good when we're learning and talking about things that he's interested in versus something that completes absolutely nothing to them. So again, it's not a knock on the prescribed curriculum, but it is to say that the research being in our side tells us children learn best when it's based on their interest. Yeah, Arlene, I love that. Yeah, let's find out together, right? Practices. So what are our practices? How do we go about implementing what we've learned. Through many conversations with other professionals, executive directors like here at Pacific Oaks, Dr. Judy Cross, we talk a lot about, I'm curious to know how our future generation of teachers are being prepared into working with young children. And it's always about, well, what practices are being taught to them, right? How can we build more of developmentally appropriate practices versus we've been doing that forever. Last night in one of my classes, we were talking about the AP as well. And I remember when I first started for a district that I was with 16 years, being part of a school that wasn't developmentally appropriate. And the question was, why are we doing it like this? And the answers that I got, and it was very evident that it was a cultural thing within that district, was we've been doing it for X amount of years. You know what? I don't know. That's just the way we've been doing it. Well, being someone that's very research-based, if you want to have an argument, you want to have a discussion that you don't know why you're doing things, you better be ready, especially if it's talking about child development. So how do we build these practices? Well, first and foremost, you're already ahead of the game by coming here and having a conversation with me about developmentally appropriate. Incorporating our DAP practices into the prescribed curriculum, which is not difficult to do. And let's challenge the way rote teaching and rote learning is happening in the class. So I'm gonna just put out a certain song that I've heard throughout my career, that's something that I personally don't encourage and I don't use, but it's out in the field, and it's just to make a comparison. Many programs that I've been a part of like to use this song about the alphabet, and A is for apple, B is for something, B, and then it goes on through the whole alphabet. Again, that's rote teaching. That's rote learning. Not to say there's anything wrong with it, but how developmentally appropriate is that? So do you think Jorgito, whose name is Jorge, really cares about the letter A? Knowing that Jorgito is very egocentric, again, that's his developmental stage right now. What am I doing? What practices am I implementing to help Jorgito grasp the concept of letters? Again, Jorgito, if I want him to be interested in the other letters, is first I need to validate J-O-R-G-E, because that's the letters of his name. So A means absolutely nothing to him. And so does B and C, and all the other letters that are not J-O-R-G-E. But everyone in a particular school that I worked for, everyone was doing that song. The administrator asked me, why am I not doing that song? What I'm getting to is, don't be afraid to be the minority in the practices that you're doing, especially when it's developmentally appropriate. We need to find a way to help others really understand and grasp these concepts of developmentally appropriate practices, so they get it and they understand. Yes, go ahead. Who's that? Arlene.
Yeah. In getting Jorgito to go along with the letters and the sounds for that, we can probably also ask him if he knows a word that has the a or the b sound in it. This way we focus attention on him, and then we go on with the rest of it. We do that for each person in the class to see if they can name something or point to something.
Okay, so I'll ask you, Arlene, and it's just for us to reflect on this. Why is it important for children in your class to know the sound of the letters?
Well, because these little sounds of letters create words, and the words create sentences. So it's just little steps of things that they need to learn in order to go to the next level. Right,
and when you say that they need to learn, I'm curious to know where you're getting the information that tells you that that's what they need to learn in preschool.
I'm getting that from my mentor and from my child development classes, from my special education classes, and from my other education classes. And it's all part of making yourself understood and understand other people. It's all about communication.
No, right. And there's nothing wrong with articulation, but I'm curious to know if the information you're getting is specifically towards early childhood education. When you assess children, do you use the DRDP?
I'm sorry?
Do you assess children in the class?
No, I just play games with them to see if they can make sounds.
Okay. So the first question that I would ask, and that would be, why is it so important about children learning specific sounds of letters? Now, children making sounds, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with helping them to articulate certain words. But remember, articulation comes from muscle development in their mouth. If a child has an IEP and they have some needs that need to be met, and articulation is one of them, I can almost be sure that the developing of the oral muscles is there. So is it fair for us to expect for Jorgito to make these sounds when those muscles in his mouth hasn't been fully developed?
Not necessarily. This is why we play the games to get the muscles developed so that he can.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's
right.
more based on what he can do, what we know he can't do, and how to help him get to that point where he can.
Yeah, completely valid into what you're saying. And I appreciate you that you're taking that time into developing those muscles. Remember, the skills that you're developing, it's for a long-term goal to get them to that point. However, my own personal question would be, why is it important for them to do that? If your assessment tools say that by this age they have to do that, then I get it. But if our assessment tools is not based into what is developmentally appropriate for him, then that's where I would have that conversation to say, well, why is it important for him to do this? Yesterday, one of my students had a similar question, and the conversation was, is it fair for us to assess children on something that they haven't been prepared for? Is it fair for us to say, Jorgito has a learning disability, Jorgito's not able to behave or follow directions when he's not ready for that? The comparison that I made was, is it fair for me to give you to write a dissertation at the undergrad level and then grade you on that? The answer is no, it's not fair because you haven't been prepared for that, right? Again, it goes back to that long-term goal and prepping you and giving you those skills to help you meet that goal. But again, it sounds like what you're doing is perfectly fine, Arlene. And again, I commend you for doing that and taking the time to fully develop those muscles before the skill, right? You're doing a fantastic job. Keep going. Myra, I see your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that it goes back to what we were speaking about earlier about the cookie cutter type of education and curriculum that then you're coming in and providing to the children that you're working with. Because of their developmental age and where they are cognitively, the idea of not following in the trend of what everybody else is doing. And I'm for sure that it's, I mean, I've sung the song, you know, I think we've all participated in that, but what a nuance to take something like their personal letters that are personally connected to them and help them find the joy in learning those letters at this developmental milestone. And then later, it's just, how they're very egocentric. It's going to be so much more it identifies to them autonomy I mean, it's just what a nuance. And thank you for sharing that, because I mean, I can look back at different scenarios or practicum classes where I've been where some of the kids are like, we're doing this again, we know that already.
Thank you for sharing that, Myra. And I think you hit it right on the head when you say, if you want them to learn the alphabet, okay, great. I don't understand why they need to learn the alphabet in preschool when, again, it's not developmentally appropriate. But if that's your goal and that's what you want to do, then like you said, Myra, maybe the first step would be to help the child understand their own individual letters, because that's what they care about. They don't care about anything else. Now you want to teach them more letters. Let's just happen to say that, like, for example, my youngest, her name is Isabella Joy, and I call her Joy. Her name only has 3 letters. But I want her to know more letters. Okay, fine. Then introduce her last name, Ramirez. Ramirez has various letters that her first name doesn't have. And I want her to learn more. Okay, you know what? Why don't you write my name? Because I know at least like to believe that I'm significant to her. Okay, now let's do your sister's name. Now let's do your mom's name. Let's do everyone else's name, as opposed to having them, again, this rote teaching of learning of, this is what I want you to learn, versus what's interesting to you and how can I teach you those skills to understand those concepts. Thank you for sharing that, Myra. So learning acquisition happens when children are interested in something, then they acquire that knowledge. We need to really comprehend and grasp the idea that children come into our classrooms filled with knowledge. They don't come in here not knowing anything. They have great ideas, and the way they see the world, it's just amazing. Their perspective, whether it be like physically how they see the world or their understanding of the way the world works. Our task as a facilitator is to help them see other perspectives. Now that's hard, especially again, egocentric. This is where they're at. But if that knowledge is meaningful to them, they're gonna get it. The volcanoes of cause and effect, they're gonna get it. Hands-on approach, let them do it. I swear to you guys, children will not learn if they sit there and you're just throwing things at them. Repeat after me, repeat after me. It's not gonna happen. If you let them do it, you have a better possibility that they might understand what you're teaching them, because those activities are intentional and they're meaningful to them. They're partaking in their learning. The lessons that we are presenting to them should have some form of meaning that are true and authentic. Now, again, through my experience, one of the things that I challenged a lot with my administrators was, how does this even mean anything to them? Now we're getting to the end of the school year, and it's very common for schools to do a graduation, right? And we're gonna pick a theme for graduation. And this theme is prepared by the teachers, and all the work and everything is prepared by the teachers, and it looks amazing. I've been to many graduations that just look fantastic. And I would always tell these teachers, you know what, you guys should consider taking my child development 4, where we talk about curriculum and you do a lot of these cute art activities. You can get graded for it. But please don't tell me that that's the child's work, because it's not. How much work did you put into it versus the child's work, right? Your graduation is a display of the child's abilities, their accomplishments throughout the years. Okay, how much hands-on happened in what you're showcasing? Is this actually the child's authentic work? Learning acquisition, again, can be most successful when children have their input into what it is that they're learning. One of the many goals in early childhood education is building autonomous children. But what do we get out of autonomous children? Self-efficacy and self-esteem. You don't need to answer this question, but really ask yourselves, how many of us struggle with our self-esteem as adults? What do you want to go back to when we were kids in retrospect and say, you know what? I know how I could have built my self-esteem to really believe in myself now as an adult. If you figured that out as an adult now and you're a teacher, start practicing that with young children so they can have a high self-esteem. So when they become adults, they believe in themselves. They believe in their ability to be able to accomplish everything and anything they want in life. Autonomous children comes with allowing them to make free choices. Again, this builds on their independence. How many of us have a hard time deciding what to eat with our partners? If children tell you, I'm hungry, and you ask them, what do you want to eat? And they tell you, I don't know. I know that's frustrating. You're hungry, but you don't know what to eat. Well, maybe you've been around an environment where you weren't given the opportunity to make decisions. This does impact your self-efficacy and your self-esteem. When children are able to make their own decisions, obviously, safety is always first. And obviously following the class norms, not hurting anybody, not hurting themselves, allow them to make a choice. You know what? It happened today. We were setting up the yard outside, setting up the classroom inside, and we usually start inside and transition outdoors. We're in Pasadena. The weather's it's been very neurotic as of late. Our expectation was we're going to start inside. So the kids never made it inside. And I'm standing in the door saying, should I tell them to come in? Let me go ask them. Hey guys, you guys don't want to come in the class? I'm like, well, you know what? Yesterday we were talking about trimming the trees, and nobody's out here yet. So we thought it's a great idea to trim the trees so the branches don't fall on anybody else. Now, look, they're not trimming the trees. It's just their imaginative play. And I think that's a great idea. Maybe you guys should trim the trees now, so when the branches fall, nobody gets dirty or their allergies don't flare up. There goes our whole plan for today. All we did, we took a deep breath, took a step back and said, cool, let's facilitate their opportunity to make decisions so they feel good about themselves. When it's time to clean up, I stand at the door and I just clap my hands. Yeah. Okay, time for us to go inside. No fighting, no arguments. They know that I allow them to make choices. They feel good about themselves. What does that do with our relationship? It makes it stronger. We have a bond because they know and they understand that I feel good and I feel safe when Jorge's around, which is pretty much what we want. How does this tie up into what we want children to do long-term? Well, children have higher academic performance when they have exploratory experiences in early childhood education. If you're going to take a picture of anything, take a picture of that and wrap your mind around that. Children have higher academic performance when they have exploratory experiences in early childhood. What better way? When you allow children to explore, it's perfectly embedded of developmentally appropriate practices. But what about the cognitive skills? Yes, we want children to be smart. We want them to have a good idea into what the colors, the numbers, the shapes, the sizes, and all that, those academic components are. But that's in kindergarten because their brain is going to be developed at a whole different level and they're going to have the capacity to absorb these. Before that, how about we focus on social and emotional development? How about we help them understand how their body is developing so they have an idea into what I can and can't do, which eventually helps them regulate their behavior. Children should learn about their physical and social worlds, acquire language, regulate their bodies, emotions, and thoughts, and gain competence in literacy, math, science, and other knowledge domains. Yeah, this is perfectly fine. This is perfectly aligned with developmentally appropriate practices. It's just a different practice, a different approach into how we're doing these things. So let's talk about this. This is nothing personal against anybody. We just want to have a conversation. And we'll talk about what's developmentally appropriate or not. The letter of the week. We had this long conversation. I did the Best Arts Conference this past weekend here in Pasadena. Talked about the letter of the week. Last night in one of my classes, we talked about the letter of the week, and I want to have this conversation with you. Does anybody have the letter of the week part of their curriculum or part of their activities that they do? And if you do, you want to share with us what it means? What does it look like? What do children do? Myra, yes, go ahead, Myra.
You take the letter and you break it down inside out, anything that's relatable with the letter. You know, if it's a T, you talk about tacos, you talk about different things that, you know, you write it, you draw it. I mean, just anything that you can, turtles, you put it in, whatever you can pull out that T, you focus on that.
Yeah. Do you do any activities, any art activities with that letter of the week?
Specifically looking at turtles. There was a art thing that we did, and basically what, now that I'm thinking of what the things you're saying, you know, it wasn't really art because it was like a template, follow this, draw the turtle because the turtle belongs to T. And they didn't really have an opportunity to say, I'm going to use crayons, I'm going to use paint, I'm going to use paper mache to build this art thing. It's just focus on the turtle, follow what the teacher's saying, and it didn't have that nuance.
Yeah, thank you, Mara. Yeah, the letter of the week, I find, and again, this is my own personal experience, I find it very hypocritical. And the idea, the notion that children can only learn one letter per week is just beyond me. As an educator, as a babysitter, as whatever you want to call me, my title is an early childhood education advocate. It's really frustrating when we expect children to learn all these things, but we want to give them a letter of the week and pretty much plaster our walls with this letter in a template of something that the adult did and just had the child do very minimal input in it and call it children's work. Letter of the week is not developmentally appropriate if you think about it. There really is no cognitive demand in letter of the week. Not to say that you shouldn't do it, but rather think about this. If you think children can learn, then what's the idea of letter of the week? What's the idea of everything has to be only pertaining to that letter of the week? So again, T is not in my name. I don't care for tacos or turtles for that matter. I'm more into dinosaurs. I like salads. I like to have my idea that turtles can be eaten by dinosaurs because I love dinosaurs. So how significant would the letter T actually mean to me? I'm not saying that what your practice is wrong. Again, I'm focusing into what the research indicates, and the research indicates that children can learn things that are meaningful to them. The letter of the week, really nothing much to it, unless you have another perspective into why you do it. Again, through my experience, when I've asked people and administrators, what's the point of the letter of the week? And it's usually, well, that's what the curriculum says. So the curriculum says that's what we have to do. Can we have a letter of the day? Can we have just one letter per hour? Can we change it and to make it more meaningful to the children? How about each one of us picks our own letter of the day? And then your task is tomorrow you bring in everything that you can wear that begins with that letter. You bring in whatever you want item that begins with the letter that you want. And see whether Brianna cares about Jorgito's jellyfish because Brianna and Jorgito are BFFs. As opposed to, I'm gonna pick the letter of the week. Right, using primary colors at the easel. Again, having the Best Arts Conference this past weekend, I had my attendees create a rainbow with 3 colors: red, yellow, and blue. That was it. And the color wheel that I had, I think it had like 12 colors. One of my attendees was able to make 18 colors. Another one was able to make 12. And none of them were the same shade as the one that I had in the color wheel. Is it developmentally appropriate? Yeah. Think about this. Think of how much money your center is going to save if you only order red, yellow, and blue. And that's because of the primary colors. All the other colors come from those 3 colors. Hold on, I see a hand. Maria, you had a question? Were you stretching or were you raising your hand? Maria Diaz?
Oh, no, sorry.
You were stretching? Okay, I thought I saw your hand. Okay. So where'd I go? Now, prescribed curriculum, it's not developmentally appropriate because it's already prescribed. You're already thinking that in 2 weeks, children are going to have an interest of clothing. I'm not saying that you can't make that developmentally appropriate, but a prescribed curriculum is already written out. It's already pretty much said what you should do. And the contradiction of what developmentally appropriate is, it's child's interest. That's it. Prescribed curriculum is not, right? Children from a community in Ohio have a very different interest from children in Boyle Heights. One, the environment, and you can talk about all the other factors that play into that. what is developmentally appropriate is a progressive emerging curriculum. And that is progressively building on ideas that children have. A couple of weeks ago, we had pipes and children were building a house. So one of my staff members read a book, I think it was Pete the Cat, about a cardboard box. So the idea came of, well, what can we do with the cardboard box? It was on a Friday. On the weekend, I went to Costco, got some boxes, brought it in on Monday. They made a castle. They made a race car. They made a boat. They painted all these things. And it's like, you know, kind of, I'm not the type of person that likes to have a mess. And it's like, those boxes. And I'm fighting with myself and saying, but they're learning. They're getting it. I can't take it away because I don't like it. Teacher-led instruction versus child-initiated play. It's so interesting that in all the child development classes that I've taught, in all the child development classes that I've taken, it's always said children learn best through play. How much free play do children have in your schools versus teacher-led instruction? Think about small group. Think about large group. Think about meal times. Think about restrictive play. You can use anything you want as long as they're table toys. Child-initiated play, they get to choose whatever they want. Cookie cutter, we talked about cookie cutter. It's a one-size-fits-all approach. Authentic work is just that. It's fully authentic into what the child wants to do. And that is completely developmentally appropriate. Developmentally appropriate plus play equates to learning. Children are best at play. The type of play has to be intentional, purposeful, engaging, and fun. We have, those of you that know Pacific Oaks Children's School, our playground is a huge sandbox, and we have tunnels, and we play with that every single day. And not once has any of the children said, you know what, I'm done, I'm tired of digging. Can we do something else? It's always, ooh, what if we make a dungeon? That means more work for me because I'm the one that usually starts digging. Right? Oh gosh, I'm kind of sore today, but all right, let's do it. Right? Eventually, this play leads to be fun and leads to having a healthy relationship with each other, which again diminishes so much behavior issues. How do we adapt play into our current classroom? Be mindful of your activities. Know how to differentiate your instruction. Remember, there's 3 types of learners that you have in your class. You have those that are visual, hence the PowerPoint. You have those that are auditory. They need to hear what you're saying. And more importantly, you have those that are kinesthetic. I have not been able to keep my foot from shaking this entire time that we've been together, which is 56 minutes. My foot's been shaking. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I have to move. Allow your children to move. Be flexible with your lesson plan and activities. Don't think that you can't manipulate or change it just because you have it on the wall. Remember, you wrote that lesson plan. You can modify it at any point. Let the children dictate that. Ask children to initiate activities. We're going to do art. What materials do you want me to bring out to you? They're going to say glue. Let them use the glue. Let it get messy. Let it get all over the place. Just clean it up. It's not a big deal. I work with an individual that would say dot, dot, not a lot. So many times I just like cringe, and it's like, let them figure it out. They got this. I'm going to upload the slide to you guys, have access to them. When you do, I want you to pay attention to this picture, playing to learn. And here you have a teacher and you have an administrator coming in and just saying, what are these kids doing? A lot of times I know, because I was in that situation early in my career where I would feel pressure just by the administrators coming in and say, oh my gosh, you know, they need to see the children learning because I'm a good teacher and I have to have my classroom in order and everybody needs to be sitting down quiet and looking ready. As opposed to, if you're my administrator, that means you're my leader, and you don't understand child development, I would question myself, why am I working under you? Again, being a early childhood education advocate, I need leaders that are willing to lead me into focusing into what's best for children, not what's best for the school. So when you guys get a chance, download and look at this. I encourage you guys to print this out and share and have a conversation. Our final reflection in the last 3 minutes is DAP is scaffolding on the child's ability, right? I want to talk about writing. There's a lot of pressure into getting the children to write, and oh my goodness, I just have to get them to write because that's what everybody wants them to do. Tell me a letter, any letter. Oops, sorry. Somebody tell me a letter. What letter do you want me to write?
M.
M. So M consists of nothing but lines. It has a vertical line, a diagonal line, another diagonal line, and another vertical line. Tell me another letter.
I.
I has a horizontal line, a vertical line, and another horizontal line. Give me another letter.
You have S in the chat.
S on the chat, all right. S consists of circles, but not full circles, okay? It has a hemisphere, right? And then it has another hemisphere, and then it has another hemisphere. That looks straight like children's work. B has a vertical line and a circle and a circle. Z has a horizontal line, a diagonal line, and another horizontal line. Come on, I know you guys are thinking, go challenge me, come on. Oh, what about the lowercase? Even better. M has a vertical, hemisphere, vertical. I is just, you can have a vertical line and a little dot. B has a vertical and a circle. R, perfect. We'll do both. A, the last one. A with the lowercase, the circle, a line, 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 line. In other words, every single letter of the alphabet and numbers consist of horizontal, vertical, diagonal, zigzag. You want children to write their names, develop the fine motor skills, develop hand-eye coordination, have them write lines and circles, and then challenge them to put these lines and circles together to make names. I'm sorry, to make letters. Letters that start with their name, that are in their name, not the alphabet. What is your goal for early childhood education? What is your role as an early childhood educator? What can we do to promote and implement DAP and ECE? It's very difficult. And it's even more difficult when we are the minority implementing DAP. But what I want us to start doing is start thinking, and please reach out to me if you want. We need to start a movement. We need to take back early childhood education and do what's best for kids, not what's best for adults. Adult issues, children's issues. Early childhood education focuses on children's issues. We develop children based on their interests. And all of our work is developmentally appropriate, not age appropriate, not curriculum driven, but developmentally appropriate for each individual child. Thank you guys very much for your time. I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for the conversation. I'm gonna go back to my, hold on, let me get this up first. I'm gonna go back to the first slide. You have my information. I'm gonna upload this. There's my email, QR code. Again, thank you guys very much. Have a wonderful day, and I hope this is working. Let's fight for our children.